My name is Correa. This is my 15-minute talk for my homiletical final assignment. I'm in the Homiletics 1 class, CM 4001, and I'm in the Group A. I will mainly incorporate the analyzing the discrepancy stage, although I will include the rest of it. Let's just take a moment to relax into this moment. If you wish to take a deep breath. And as we release, we become still and know that the living, loving presence of Divine Spirit is flowing in and through us, guiding all that we do, healing anything that we need to have healed, and guiding our every step. And so it is. Amen. Unity's third principle states that the human beings create their experiences by the activity of their thinking. Everything in the manifest realms has its beginning in thought. Growing up, especially as I was about to graduate from high school in New York, I was not sure what I was supposed to be doing with my life. I felt that I had spent the last 4 years in New York just trying to adjust to a new country, a new family, a new language. I say a new family because my two sisters and I had spent 5 years before that with our maternal grandparents. And this was back in my home country of Colombia. Now, while my parents were in New York, and I knew they were here, I knew they had come to look for a better financial situation. I guess you could say they were using Unity's third principle at that moment, looking for prosperity, trying to create it. Now, even though I knew that my parents were in the U.S., as a child, it never really dawned on me that someday I might be moving to the U.S. I never saw my future being anywhere outside of the country that I knew as a home. I was just happy knowing that from day to day I was going to be with my friends, whether it would be riding bicycles, playing soccer, or whatever else we might think of doing, get in trouble or not. These, of course, were my major decisions at the time. In New York, though, at the beginning, I had a hard time adjusting. I was having a hard time making friends, and I was totally adjusting to my dad's harsh, usual erratic behaviors that he incorporated with us. But I did manage to do something right, I thought. I managed to learn the English language fairly well in the first few years that I was here. I do recall thinking to myself that I wanted to learn the English from school, from my teachers, and not what I heard on the streets. Something in me knew that I needed to become proficient with the English. Without knowing it, I guess I was using Unity's third principle. Nevertheless, at no point in those 4 years did I have a chance to really think about what I wanted to do after I graduated from high school, let alone what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Therefore, coming out of high school, with no sense of what I wanted to do, my first thought was, I'll go find a job, maybe work different jobs here and there, and whatever calls my attention, then I'll go back to school and get a degree on it. But my parents didn't want to hear that. They insisted that I go to college. So I had to make a choice. What major should I take? Being that I really at the time had no clue what I wanted to do, I followed the money. I knew that supposedly as an engineer you could make a lot of money, so I decided to go with mechanical engineer. To me it sounded a lot easier than an electronical engineer, so I stuck with that. But in my first year of college, since I had no real direction, a good friend of mine that I had met back from high school, and we ended up in one of our same classes, he convinced me to go into medical technology, to become a lab technician. And that's because his father was in charge of the medical technology section in one of the hospitals in New York. So we thought we'd get a job through him. Long story short, you might say it's too late for that now, but as you can imagine, that didn't go too well. All the chemistry, all the biology, it was just not for me. And let's not even mention calculus. Of course, I had to eventually change my major. But this time, I finally started thinking, if I am forced to go to school, let me at least study something that I would like better. Now, by this time, I have picked up the guitar, and actually I moved on to the bass guitar because my good friend was already a real good guitar player, so he asked me to pick up the bass, and we would form a rock and roll band, which we did, and we would basically do covers of 70s and 80s hard rock. Anyway, as you might guess, I decided to change my major to music. Funny thing happened, my grades got better, I was actually enjoying going to school, I made new friends, I was actually feeling better about myself. Although, with my thinking at the time, I saw that most of my fellow students seemed to be way ahead of me because they had picked up their instrument at a much earlier age than I had. And I kind of felt like I was lagging behind. And to top it off, one of the music teachers, he was actually the teacher in charge of the department, in his great wisdom, made a comment that really stuck with me. He said that the average salary of a musician at the time, which was back in the late 80s, was 28 cents an hour. And I thought, 28 cents an hour, how do you live? If you relate it to today's money, that would be about 57 cents an hour. Although I've done my research, and I'll probably be making more money right now than I am doing what I'm doing at the time. Which leads me to, with having that thought that I wasn't confident with my abilities, and having that thought in my mind, I decided to go into audio engineering. The funny thing is, the official title for this is audio engineering, which has to do with running sound, for music or speech. I know I started thinking about mechanical engineering, I ended up with audio engineering, so I got one of the words from it. I found a school that was called the Institute of Audio Research, and they had something called multi-track recording technology. And I went into that, and I actually did pretty well with it. And in the meantime, I was also becoming a sort of a musician. I was playing with a couple of bands. No, nothing major, but it was something that kept me going. And during that time, after I graduated from my audio engineering degree, I found a job with the Brooklyn Arts Council, which is a company in Brooklyn that supports the local artists. And at the time, they were running sound for all those local musicians, so I was able to work with all the local musicians at the time, whether it be in a small park gathering, or we would do the street festivals in Brooklyn. I actually had a chance to do the 4th of July fireworks live simulcast from one of the stations in New York, WPLJ, and from the right across from the Hudson River. That was, I thought, my highlight of my career back then. I worked for a couple of years doing my audio engineering, till it was, I guess it was time for me to move out of New York. Even though I was feeling good about playing music and doing what I was doing, there was something that just quite didn't feel right. And I always thought when I got to New York subconsciously that I wanted to leave New York sometime in the near future. which I eventually did. So I had a chance to move to Orlando, and at that point, I made another conscious decision, and this one was to be extrovert, while having fun at it. Once again, I was using Unity's third principle, which was creating my experience by my activity of my thinking. I went into the hospitality industry, more specifically working at the front desk in the hotels. That gave me a chance to practice becoming more extrovert. I thought the principle was working. After 6 years of this, I found myself going back to the audiovisual world, and I found my job at the Orange County Convention Center, where I have been for the last 20 years or so. Now during this, I was thinking, normally the audiovisual could be a very strenuous job, but something that had stuck in my mind was a phrase that went, work smarter, not harder. This was coined by Alan Mogensen, the creator of work simplification, and he actually quoted this back in the 1930s. Now, don't get me wrong, I have no problem with hard work, which brings me to my next quote by Zig Ziglar, who wrote the book, See You at the Top. And it goes, when a job is once begun, you leave it not until it's done. And be a matter, large or small, you do it well or not at all. This book actually got me into working into my self-esteem, which led into my spiritual work. Now my spiritual work actually, you could say, grew, and it went to a whole different level when I found Unity. Working with the spiritual enrichment classes, and at the same time I had found A Course in Miracles. In doing all the lessons and reading all the texts, I actually felt a shift, and I knew that my spiritual work was being activated and being realized, and I found my treasure. This brings me to my quote from the Bible, and it is from Matthew 13:44 through 46, and it's from the New Revised Standard Version. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Now my spiritual work, to me, is my one pearl of great value. Now I have not exactly gone and sold everything I had, but I have focused my energy and my resources to afford this great pearl. Now since realizing that my spiritual work is this great pearl, I have committed myself to borrow a line from Deuteronomy 6:4, with all my heart, with all my soul, and with all my might. Now through my years of experience, I have come to realize that every step that I have taken along the way was exactly what I needed to do at the time. Now most of these steps for me were like that irritant in the oyster, which causes the oyster to cover it with a crystalline substance until it becomes that beautiful, shining pearl. In truth, even if we feel that we do not know what we're supposed to do, we should do what comes out for us with commitment and decision. And when you find what you're truly passionate about, you can commit to it with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Blessings.